Throughout history, the pen has been a tool for the artist, the politician, the author, and most importantly, the dreamer. The ink within is the lifeblood of illustrations, the written word, and mathematical equations, allowing those who would understand a glimpse into worlds other than their own. What worlds will you create while playing with ink? Hi, I'm Plutarch.
And I'm Narwin.
And I'm Luke.
And welcome to Playing with Ink!
Woo, we're back!
Yay, we're back after a little hiatus. But we're just gonna go ahead and jump right in. So Luke, this is your chance to plug yourself and introduce yourself to the audience. If the audience has been listening for a while, we're Plutarch and Narwin, or Kaylin and Chandler. And we do a part in Playing with Ink is all about world building and having guests on and exploring different worlds. And but if you haven't been listening for a while, there you go. That's what this is about. If you have been listening for a while and want to know who our new guest is, Luke, why don't you introduce yourself?
Sure. So I'm Luke. I go by Nomadic Bard 93 on most social medias, but you'll find me probably most active on Instagram. I'm the creator and game master for an actual play based in the UK called Bard Shots, where we play one-shots of indie TTRPGs. We do play some bigger names too, but all sorts of games to explore the sort of vast array of games that we've got in this world and not just D&D.
So awesome. If you haven't checked out Bard Shots, I want you to stop and go check it out now. Go check out the episodes. And you said you play different kind of TTRPGs and stuff. What have you played so far? Just as a first off question, just to give people like a little bit of taste.
Yeah, sure. So we've played Gothica Plague Worlds by Elliot. I think you've had as a guest before, right? So yeah, we got to play that. That was our first one. So I was very grateful for Elliot for trusting us with that. We have played 10 Candles, Daggerheart, Force of Extinction, What Haunts Us, which is a TTRPG by Innocent Goblin. And by the time we've recorded this, we've played Legends of Azeroth and Ex Tenebris as well. So a few different games. We've also played a couple of 2-player games of Modern Prometheus and The Time We Have.
Yeah, that's so awesome. Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and get started with our questions. And this is something we ask every single guest, and every guest answers it totally differently. But what do you think world building means, and how does it affect you while you're exploring, writing, or playing in a world?
Wow. I mean, it's such a big and broad question, so I can understand where you get lots of different bits back. I think for me, world building, I suppose particularly from the aspect of mostly being a game master, is that it is the building blocks to any story or any game. It brings the vague structure. I say vague because the players always cause chaos in one way or another, but it gives me the basis of what the world is, what the story I want to tell is, and some ways that this will affect the players. But to be fair, it's never done until the players come on and collaborate with me. I'm much more of a collaborative world builder. I prefer to have a group of people come in and tell me what ideas they've got for their characters and how that part of the world shaped them, and then I will make it fit in whatever world I'm building, really. And probably similarly when I'm playing in a world as a player, when I occasionally get to play, the world informs. I'll have an idea of my character and why they will act a certain way, but the world helps structure that, whether it's some kind of oppressive place that they're from or a happy, nice place that they're from, and then they go to somewhere really awful. Like I'm playing a paladin in Strahd who comes from a happy little farm town and now is having an existential crisis in Barovia. So things like that, really. But I think the world building sets the scene, but until you get the players in it, you can't bring it to life, really.
Yeah. So, well, that's actually another question that I was going to bounce off of this. Like when you plan a one shot, as you do one shots in game mastering, do you base your story off of the characters the players have created, or do you give aspects of the story you are planning to the players so they can create their characters? But it sounds like you kind of already answered this a little bit, in saying you get the characters first, which, correct me if I'm wrong, but is kind of rare in the TTRPG world, I've found, because when I tell people I do that, they're like, you're insane. Because they're like, why would you build a one shot or build a game off of your players? And I'm like, I don't know. I guess I just I should phrase that more correctly. I mean, obviously you build a one shot and stuff off of your characters, but I don't start planning until I get the characters. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I'm similar. I probably do a little bit of like, this is vaguely the setting. Like, so for instance, we're going to be doing Draconim, and this is a session 0 I've got directly after we're recording this, but
awesome.
So it's all about dragon riders. It's fancy setting, and I was like, okay, we're setting it in a school, and you're going to be sort of learning how to be dragon riders. We're doing it that way. But I like to, well, then in the session 0, flesh out like what happens in the school, what classes they have, who they are, who their rivalries are, and all of that. Because I think for me, it breeds automatic investment, because it's hard to get investment in such a short-term thing sometimes. Because, I mean, I've been very lucky. I have a lot of amazing storytellers as players who will really flesh out their characters. But I know sometimes for one-shots, people come and go, I'll just use this throwaway character, or I'll try out a class and I'm not that bothered whether they live, die, what they do, what they don't do. It's a bit of chaos. Whereas if you make people at least to the bare bones go, what's your character want? What do they hate? Or what are they going to fear for the most in the next 3 hours? And it lets me go, okay, these are the bits I'm going to hit, right? Or if you fail a roll, I know what the worst thing I need to do to you is. Which isn't the way I plan everything, obviously. But, but I just think it builds automatic investment and collaboration, and they're already in on the story before you've even started telling it. It's kind of my approach anyway.
Yeah, I love that. So you specifically mentioned the word investment. So calling back to one of our other podcasts when Rygon was on, he also mentioned the word investment when it comes to world building. And so I think, and before Rygon had mentioned it, obviously we were like, there's probably other people in here in the community who use the term investment.
Yeah.
But because you use the term investment when you talk about these games, when you try to get your players invested, what's the time frame? Like, how far do you plan, like, before the one shot? Like, when you say, oh, the players like write their backstories, like, is there like a time frame, like the day you're born? Or like,
no, yeah, that's a question.
How much, what I'm asking is, how much do you not necessarily require, but want your players to invest into their backstories so they are then invested in the game?
It's a really good question. I think for these one shots, and because they are one shots, we're playing for sort of 3.5 hours max in a kind of actual play format. I just want the key cornerstones of who the character is. So I don't need sort of like my mother and father's names are these. This is the family tree for 6 generations. Here's everything I've been through up until this point in my life. I think for me, it's in this moment, in whatever situation we're in, what shaped you to get there? So why have you got to that point? So it may be something as simple as like, I don't know, let's take the Dragon Rider example. I come from a long line of Dragon Riders. That's all I need in some respects. I don't need every single person that's done it. What are their hopes? What are their fears?
My father, my grandfather.
So I get it. All right.
Yeah.
Barry Senior was a Dragon Rider. Like, yes. But their hopes in the situation, in the situation we're going to go into, their fears in the situation we're going to go into, and then generally with the party, and because we're, oftentimes we have a rotating cast, so sometimes it's people have never played with before. It's in the session 0. Who's connected to who might be hiding a secret from who, that kind of thing. So a couple of bits just to pull them together as a party. but not much more than that really, because I value people's time. It's a one shot, no matter how professional we want it to be. I don't expect reams of backstory for something so short, really.
That's funny, because I just played it in one shot, and my backstory was like 5 pages long.
Oh, come on.
I mean, I've equally done it, don't worry.
yeah, and I'm like, you would probably not like playing with me, but it was for Bold Mordred's Valkyries.
Nice.
I don't know if anyone's aware of that happened, but it did happen, and it was a lot of fun, and I don't think I've ever cried super hard in a one shot ever. We talking about investment, we did invest a lot into that one shot. So it's interesting. Do you think investing more in a one shot equals more payout to a certain respect?
I do. Yeah, I do. So, I mean, don't get me wrong. I say, like, those are the basics of what I want. If someone comes at me with a 5-page backstory, fantastic. Like, that's more stuff I can work with. I always have to balance that with the other players, of course. But if there's more world building in it from the player perspective, great. And not from a lazy GM perspective where I'm just like, okay, that's done for me. It's more of you've already got a really good sense of who this person is, and we can pull on some of those strings, whether we use all of it or we don't. I mean, one of my best friends who plays in my home campaign, she's written pages and pages of backstory to me, and it updates it as we go through the campaign and sends it me over, and I'm like, right, okay, I know how to horrify you next game.
I know how to make your trauma worse.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. She's used to it. If she's listening, Leash, don't worry, you're fine. But
fine.
Yeah, don't worry about it. It's fine. But yeah, I do think if you put more into who your character is, then you will get a lot more out of it. Like for the time we have duet, and the duets I think are a little bit different sometimes because it's 2 players, so it's a little bit more intensive at times. But me and Tay, who did it, and I was very lucky to have Tay as my sort of partner in that game. We did probably a good week and a half messaging back and forth just of who these characters are, what they've been through, what their family were like, because they were siblings, so we wanted to get a really good sense of who they were, because we knew for that game it's just the 2 of us having a conversation for 2 hours. And I love improvising, it's kind of my background, but equally having a good sense of who that person is allows me to improvise much easier.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, speaking of the duets, Chandler, you had a question about the duets.
Yes. So, like I said earlier today, I got to listen to a little bit of your work. And the one thing that impressed me the most was the Prometheus duet episode.
Cool.
How I'm just gonna be honest, I have no experience with a 2-player system or a game like that. So when that popped up, and I was like, okay, this looks interesting. I want to check this out. How you, Becca was her name?
Yeah, Becca. Yeah,
Becca. How you just worked, how the story just how each character felt in the moment with you waking up, and this is something new. You're explaining emotions of the first few moments of a being, of a character. And that just thoroughly impressed me. So talk a little bit about you said the duet games are the that is a brand new thing you're doing. Tell us
yes.
Tell us a little bit about how that started, or what inspired you to begin those. Tell us.
Yeah. So I mean similar to how Bard Shots was made in the first place, which was I've got all these games, I mean literally sat behind me, because we're obviously on video talking to each other, but sat behind me that I haven't played, and it's it's going to come a point where I've either got to play them or get rid of them at some point before I sink more money into my hobby. But with the duets, there were so many 2-player games that I'd heard of and wanted to try out, and didn't get a lot of opportunity because most of my players are sort of used to the D&D type setting in terms of home players and what have you. And so when I was thinking about Bard Shots, and we'd done a couple of months of the sort of main games, I was like, well, I want to add a bit more content and something a bit different. And there are probably 2 reasons for doing duets. One of which was a little bit how would I word it? A bit more just from a professional perspective. It's much easier to schedule one other person with me than try and schedule 5 adults every month. So scheduling one person, much easier. Much easier just to get someone in instead of doing 2 full campaigns, or not campaigns, but 2 full one-shots a month. He says after he's been doing that for the last couple of months. But but equally, it was just like I said, there's so many 2-player games out there, from like things like God Killer, which is one we're doing next, that I've always been so interested in, just because it is so intensive as a role play dynamic. Because there's not a lot of room to hide, right? You know, I think we've probably all been in games where you can take a bit of a back seat at times, or you can be that support character that might not be as upfront, even if you're role playing really well and all of that. Whereas in this, it's like you've really got to know your character and just go out there and leave it all on the table. And equally, as a GM, and I love GMing, it's one of my favorite things to do. But I always feel a lot of the times I'm kind of there taking the back seat. Like, it's the character's story; they're the main characters. I'm there to help guide them at times and here and there. But in terms of exploring a character, I don't get to do that as a GM, really, or not massively. There's a few ones that I will, but in a one shot especially, I don't massively get to explore a character. So actually being able to, I guess, somewhat selfishly, like, flex my own role-playing muscles and be a character, and go back and forth. I mean, A Modern Prometheus, me and Becca were sort of not only playing sort of with each other as our characters, but equally we had to sort of come in as various NPCs for each other's scenes. But it was just fun to be able to do that. And like, it takes a lot of trust, and it takes probably a lot more trust sometimes in a main game, in a 2-player game, because it's just the two of you. You've got to trust that your partner's going to have your back with it and be able to sort of role play with you, or carry on the story and what have you. So yeah, being able to do that was really kind of where it got born from. And then I've been very lucky that both Becca and Tay, who have been sort of my duet partners so far, are both like phenomenal in what they do and great storytellers. So it's been so easy and good to just kind of slot into that and get to tell stories. And yeah, they've been really fun just to do and edit and things like that as well, to be fair, because I do a lot of the editing myself. So editing a short form story, equally slightly easier. Yeah, I get it.
It's so I used to do for Ink Nights, another podcast. This also a video cast, Beyond the Ink, which is it's Lorcana based Disney TCG card game thing that I play competitively. So yeah, that's a side rant. I know the editing. Yeah. I feel the pain. Yeah. But
like, there's bits of it I love, but yeah, it's
yeah. I've been doing it practically my whole life since high school.
Yeah.
So I've seen the evolution.
Yeah.
But to get back to, you said you have to have a lot of trust in the person you're sitting across from. So yeah, I could see, but man, does that make good content though, especially if the other person is like, you're working well with it, and like, you know, the energy's flowing, and it's also, or it's almost like improv.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
So, but like with the games being like that, the 2-player games, I guess it gives. You guys are reading kind of off of were those question prompts within the game, I guess, or?
Yeah, a lot of them were. I think we added in some of our own, but most of it was prompts that were through the game and designed that way. So, which is a testament to the game designers who've made a game that you can easily pick up and go through. But yeah,
but it was awesome. Like again, perfect for content, and like just sitting there. It might be a little bit awkward. You're both sitting there across the table, just like sharing feelings about maybe, but like just for somebody watching it, and like or it might not be for somebody who just loves improv, like just trying to get through and develop a character, bring this person to life. Yeah. It's really cool though.
It has been really cool. And like, there are elements where it might feel awkward, but I know, like, so the time we have one, which was our other duet. I mean, I legitimately cried in it, just because it was because you're playing siblings, one of which is dying at the end of the world. It's kind of an apocalyptic situation. So it's really tough, and you really have, like I said, that's where the trust comes in. But in like, when I say crying, in like the best way possible, because it was good. We'd acted so well. So yeah,
good emotion. Good emotion.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Healthy emotion.
When you tie
like therapy.
Yeah, when you tie your own emotions into these characters that you put life into, you're tied to them. I mean, 100%. I think one of our other podcasts we talked about every character we've ever made is a piece of us in some way.
Yeah, definitely.
So sometimes you give a little bit more, sometimes it's a lot less. Sometimes you just make a murder hobo that dies 5 seconds into the game, but
yeah,
that's just how it goes.
Well, these one shots that you're making, these like 2-person one shots, are very unique when it comes to world building, and storytelling to begin with. TTRPG is just a unique form of storytelling, but I think what you're doing is a unique form of TTRPGing of TTRPGs. But do you think because of how you do the short form storytelling and how your players are invested and how like you're invested emotionally, do you find that it is harder or easier to tell a story short form, or world build short form, or come up with a character short form?
Oh, it's interesting. I think world building, I suppose it's a little bit easier because you don't have to do as much world building. Like, in all honesty, like, you know, I have a homebrew campaign. I'm used to doing, like, you know, thousands of years of lore that most of which my players never touch on. But in the short form, it's like, okay, in the immediate scenario we're going to go into, of which there's probably going to be like a very quick, like 3-act like section to this one shot of setup, climax, and then the ultimate sort of resolution. What are the beats we want to hit? So what is the world building that we need to do? So whether that's based on the characters or based on the world we're in. So like, and there's been different versions of it. So like Gothica, we used one of the sort of pre-written scenarios. So some of the world building is done there, right? And we've had that for some of the games. But something like our Daggerheart one shot, which was a bit tongue-in-cheek, we did a sort of Hallmark Christmas movie-esque. Yes. Literally just kind of pulled that out of like between like my ideas and my love of those films, and equally like the players' insane characters. We just kind of built it around that and kind of went in the immediate scenario in this village. What's the world? And sort of went from that respect, because I think we often call it world building, but it can be as big or as little as you want it to be, right? It could be a haunted house and that is your world for this scenario. So I think it can be easier just because you can do a lot less of it. And I think making characters and things, I suppose, again, it can be easier because, you know, they're just there for that scenario, and whether they have fully formed or not, it doesn't matter, but it's less important than if you've got a campaign, you've got to stick with that character for like months or years. Mm-hmm. I think the harder thing is that you don't get to fully explore them, and, you know, even these little worlds you build, we come away from each game and I'm like, I could make this into a campaign, but I'd have about 100 campaigns going right now if I did.
Yeah. Well, you've mentioned to me that you have a campaign coming.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, is it going to be in a war? Like, you mentioned to me that something about it, and I want you to tell me about it. So, sure. Yeah, tell us about this campaign that's coming up. Is it going to be, because it's different than short form storytelling, do you think you're more prepared for this campaign, or just because of how you think through stories and acts and structure? Or do you think that perhaps that you're going to have to switch gears in your mind? I'm just asking general questions about the campaign.
No, it's fair.
But and what is this campaign? Like, what is it going to be, in a pre-made world, a world you've created? So please tell me.
Sure.
Or tell us.
Tell you all my secrets. No. I mean, I'll answer the first question about preparedness, which is I never feel massively prepared, to be honest. I don't know if any GM really does, but
we don't.
Because I was going to say, until the players come in, you're like, it could all go wrong. So, probably easy to start with what the campaign's about a little bit, to give you a bit of a sneak preview. I think it's probably an exclusive because we've not really talked about it too much on socials yet. So you get a Playing with Ink exclusive. We're going to do a campaign, so a Bard Shots campaign. It's very much based in the whole Bard Shots ethos of various TTRPG systems. So for this, I'm forcing my players to do 2 different systems. So they will have one character they will play, and one part of a world they're in will be a Kids on Bikes character.
I love that.
So they are playing in a sort of pseudo Britain. So we're making up our own town so that they don't start researching bloody town history and then I have to really change it all. But so in a town that we've all collectively made, we did it in session 0. It went a little bit unhinged, I will admit. But we've made a town that they are all living in as teenagers. They're all friends who play D&D. This will come into it in a second. And there'll be a sort of small town mystery that's going on at the same time. And so they are sort of at school and navigating the world just as their sort of teen selves. They will at some point somehow get pulled into a D&D world. So they're going to get pulled into ancient Netheril, which for big D&D fans and that know the lore of that isn't necessarily the best place to be at all times.
No.
Nope.
They don't know what time of the ancient Netheril they're going to be in, so we'll see what they think. But yeah, they're going to be playing in that. So they'll have a D&D character that'll be the D&D character their teenager plays. They will be cognizant of the fact that they are in the D&D world as their teen self. So there's a few fun elements that can kind of come with that, which I've already told them. They'll be switching back and forth. Not constantly, because that will be a pain to try and GM, but there will be episodes where they may go back into sort of the kids on bikes world as they sort of get pulled back out into the real world. But I've said to them, like, they can, go as their teen characters and research D&D monsters if they know what they might be coming up against. So if they get told they've got to go and, I don't know, hunt down a dragon, they could go and research it, and then they can use the meta knowledge they find out in the kids on bikes realm, if they roll really well, to then inform what their character does or what their character knows going into the D&D world. And equally, the hope is that as they sort of play as these heroic figures in the D&D world, that will impact on their psyche as teens, where they become more confident or just trust themselves a little bit more and things like that. So taking sort of big inspiration from things like, Stranger Things, quite obviously, the Page Master, if anyone's seen that 1994 classic. Yes, thank you. I'm so glad you know it. Because there was a point in my life I thought I fever dreamed that film. And
No, you did not.
But things like Jumanji as well, where you're sort of world and not really, and then sort of pulled out. But they will have much more opportunity to get pulled back out at the same time. So yes, it could be really good fun. I think Bard Shots has probably set it up just in terms of, one, they know the systems that they're playing, and at the end of the day, I mean, and this isn't to negate the work that game designers do, because a lot of my favorite games are based on incredible game design, but at the end of the day, TTRPGs are all about, I have a character, this is what they want to do, what mechanism do I need to do, whether it's different dice or playing cards or whatever, to describe whether the action succeeds or fails, and then we build off from that. So there's not much difference in terms of like the systems, in all honesty, apart from we roll it slightly differently or stats are done slightly differently. But yeah, it should be fun and give a bit of flavor, as opposed to just sort of like not that there's anything wrong with just a straight D&D actual play, but I think it could be quite saturated at the moment, and so doing something where we mix it up a little bit is always going to be fun and interesting.
Yeah, that sounds awesome.
Yeah, fingers crossed it comes across also. We'll see when it comes out. No, I'm really looking forward to it.
I'm sitting here thinking, like, so when you were trying to figure out the Page Master, when you were pitching it to your friends, like, it's like, there was this movie where Kevin McAllister and Doc Brown were in a library and they were cartoons.
Yeah.
And
luckily, two of them knew it, and I was like, I'm not going crazy then. But yeah, I was like, there was just this really anxious kid that had to go to the library and find the exit, but somehow went through Gulliver's Travels, Jekyll and Hyde, and all
Treasure
of that
Island
to get there. Yeah, exactly.
I did not dream this. I did not.
I promise I'm a functional human being. We'll send it to you.
Yeah, we'll send it to you.
Film.
It's,
okay, cool.
It's Macaulay Culkin and Christopher Lloyd.
Oh, interesting.
Yep.
It's great. It's great.
Oh yeah. That was just where my brain went. It was like, how would you describe the Page Master?
It was
to someone who has never seen it. Like right now, like Plutarch. Like, how do we? Kevin McAllister, Doc Brown, library, cartoon, exit. There you go.
Oh.
Yeah, it goes from real world to cartoon as well, just to bridge that into it as well. Yeah, it's really good. It holds up.
Very underrated movie.
Just about. It is. Yeah.
But anyway.
So, So Kids on Bikes, I'm assuming you've played Kids on Bikes before.
Yes.
Has that been like one you really wanted to return to, and so you figured out a way to incorporate that into the campaign?
Yeah, basically.
Yeah,
Thank you for calling me out on that. No.
Well, I was just wondering. I was like, wait a second, Kids on Bikes is great.
Yeah, it is. It's fantastic.
So I was like, that's really. As soon as you said Kids on Bikes, but 2 games, I was like, wait a second. I was like, this is some meta.
It is, yeah.
I love it.
I think it can be tough sometimes doing D&D with people who have so much knowledge of D&D too, right? Like you're naturally, I mean, as a player who equally has played D&D for many years, like I have to really think about what my character knows and what they don't, because I'm there like, I know what this monster's resistances are. So this kind of skirts around it a little bit, or at least gives them a mechanism to use it or not.
Use the meta.
But yeah, use the meta. Absolutely embrace meta gaming. But no, like Kids on Bikes, I love. Like I fell in love with it when I played it. I've kind of used in my home game, which my players are very used to by now. Sometimes we'll have arcs of the story or something happens in the story where we'll dip into another TTRPG. One to make them play another different TTRPG.
Yeah.
But equally, some games are just set up much better for like, so like they've gone into an ancient temple and we've done a bit of a Call of Cthulhu-esque type thing because it's set up much better for it, and there was it tied in lore wise for what they were doing. Like they've got, at some point they'll be going to a magic school, so Kids on Brooms, for example, would be a great thing if they're going to go and explore that and play into that a little bit. So I like to play with different, as you can tell by what I do completely, but I like to play with different systems and bring them in where I can, because some games have just got some killer mechanics. And it's great to like use them when you can, if players are on board, obviously. But so the minute I was like, I want to do a campaign for Bard Shots, because I'm sick of just doing one shots, but I'm sick of not carrying on the stories sometimes.
Yeah.
So having some kind of ongoing story would be great.
Yeah,
it's hard. Like the Legends of Azeroth one we just did, like it was very much like it felt like the start of a campaign, really, like little village heroes going into the big wide world for the first time. And so like we ended where they got to like the capital and they'd sort of gone through a little bit to kind of play with the dynamics of Legends of Azeroth and show it off, because it was just going through its crowdfunding. But I came away from it and we all then watched it back when we streamed it and we're like, we should just carry it on, shouldn't we? But so this gives me a mechanism to do that, and bridge a bit of that gap that I have of wanting to do a campaign at the same time.
Okay, I do have a question that's like, as I'm thinking about TTRPGs and how you choose games. Have you found that there is a common denominator for like having fun while playing a game? Like, not necessarily, this isn't like what makes a game good, but is there something that is consistent for you specifically that you're like, oh, I like this, I want to play this game?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, I was going to say any game that gives a little bit of leeway to still, I guess, have those comedic elements. Like I'm a big horror fan. I've been a big horror game fan as well. So a lot of the TTRPGs that I love are mostly based in horror. But I think with horror, you can't really appreciate the true terror of a situation if you don't have the contrast of some levity during it as well. So if you don't have those moments of like comedy or bits or something, you can't really feel the true horror, because if you're just sat in that for 3 hours, one, it's not necessarily fun either. But you need that up and down, that contrast, to really make it sort of feel alive. But in terms of the games themselves, I think the ones that I found the most fun are, and that have been the kind of, I guess, have bred the most fun through us playing it and going on to it, is the ones that have got fairly, when I say basic, again, I don't mean it derogatory, but basic mechanics that you can just like, here's a quick way to create a character. Like you don't need to, D&D can be off-putting. I mean, we've got lots of tools now, but D&D used to be very off-putting because it can be a pain to make a character, and you have to feel like you have to know a lot. Things like D&D Beyond make it a little bit easier now, but still it can be a little bit disarming for people when they first go, oh, I've got to read all these books. Whereas like a game like, say, Force of Extinction, it has, like, you've got 3 set stats, which is, I think, wit, grit, and survival. It's very action-based kind of TTRPG. It's not actually out yet. It's coming out, I think, in May. But you've got 3 set stats, and then you build your character. You can just build completely freely off that. And so as long as you know, like, okay, my character's smarter, so I'll put more in wit or whatever. You can build whoever you want, and you can make the mechanics work for you. And that tends to be the biggest thing for me to have fun. And that I found player investment is something that's easy to pick up, or has the tools to make it easier to pick up, and that you can really just kind of like go wild with your character, really.
Yeah. So I'm playing a Daggerheart campaign.
Nice. Yep.
I'm not playing. I'm GMing it.
Cool.
So you played Daggerheart as a one shot.
Yeah.
So did you find, like, when you say like basic mechanic, do you find the kind of, to give context, Daggerheart has a lot of like character creation questions that are part of
it.
Chandler, are you getting Daggerheart?
I can get it right behind me.
Yeah, I've got it right here too.
Nice.
I've got it right behind me.
Yep. I was like, yep, I'm going to grab it.
Yeah, I've got it right behind me too. But so just to call out one specific TTRPG, do you find the character creation questions that have to deal with mechanics helpful because they create more customization, or do you find them kind of constricting?
I find them quite helpful. I think anything that makes people think a little bit more about their characters and where some of these bits come from, I think can be quite helpful. I think it can be quite jarring sometimes for players when they're kind of asked a little bit more freely sometimes. So I know, for example, like the experience is part in it when it's just like, you can say whatever you want. And without some kind of guide, I've had many players be like, but what do I put? And you're like, well, whatever you want. Like, that's the point, right? You think about your character and something that they're like good at. But equally, as a player of Daggerheart, because I've played a few times, luckily, I know even when I've come to that bit, I'm being a bit like, I don't know what to put because I kind of want it to sound cool and not just
exactly.
he's a thief. I think it can be difficult just in terms of getting players used to it, particularly D&D vets, because you're just so used to such strict and stringent rules. And not to hate on D&D, because obviously it got most of us into this hobby, right? But it's so strict that then coming to something that feels almost entirely free and that like you can make whoever, whatever, and you just answer some questions to kind of pull it out a little bit more. I think it can be quite a shock to the system, but I personally really like it. I think it adds some really interesting flavor, and I think it adds a little bit more where you could have two characters of the same class or general build, but flavor them entirely differently just based on some of those experiences.
I find it funny when I'm playing Daggerheart that when I'm GMing it, that when I look at a player and ask them, "Oh, what is this?" Like I ask, because part of Daggerheart is having your players build the world with you, and they just freeze. And I've talked about this before on here, but they've gotten a lot better at it in the past few months. They like pick it up, but I feel like you mentioned collaborative storytelling. So do you, because you're not playing Daggerheart, and Kids on Bikes and D&D are a little more structured, but Kids on Bikes is a little more free flow. Do you plan to incorporate elements like that for collaborative storytelling in your new campaign?
Yeah, definitely. I think so. A little bit of lore, I guess, about me then. I one of my favorite systems of all time is 10 Candles. It's why we've played it. It's the general mechanic is that the players are rolling against the GM for narrative control. So it's a real interesting one when you first get going. I mean, I could go on. It's an entirely different podcast, me talking about 10 Candles and why it's structured the way it is and why it's a beauty of a game design. But you're rolling against each other for narrative control. So if the players get it, they can describe whatever outcome they want, whether they want it to be successful or they want it to fail. They get to GM like with you. It's also designed in a way it's designed in a way where they GM a lot at the beginning because they have a lot more dice than you, because it's like a dice pool that you sort of end up trading between, and then at the end you GM a lot as you but one by one kill them all off. So I'm not portraying myself as a great person today, but hey, but that is very jarring for people who come from nothing. Who come from D&D, not from nothing, because you have nothing to go off of. You just decide, and you can make whatever you want in that scenario. A lot of the people I play with make the situation worse, which is great for me as a GM. But you also have a mechanic through it. Yeah, you also have a mechanic in it where you talk about truths of the world, so you world build together. So I've always taken bits from that, and even in D&D, and I would do this, and I will be doing this in the campaign too, of okay, you succeed. I'm not just going to say what's successful. Like, as long as you don't go game breaking and say that you suddenly get the ability to wish that the world is perfect, like, you can tell me what happens, like, on your success. Like, similar to how, I mean, I know we're all talking about being crit roll fans, but similar to how Matt does the whole, how do you want to do it?
Yeah, exactly.
It's that kind of thing, but even for a like skill-based success, like I like doing that kind of thing of like, well, what do you think you find? And then I can incorporate it and make it work however I want. But I think you're right. I think Kids on Bikes, there's a little bit more structure to it than maybe say something like Daggerheart, but it's still fairly open because we completely world built together when we were starting out and built a whole town from scratch that went it started as kind of just like a small British town, and it suddenly became like, this is where like paper was invented and the rival town has got something else to do with it. And then there's this organization that's coming in to try and like capitalize on the paper market. And I was like, okay, I was never going to go down this way, but hey, we'll make it work. So yeah, so it'll be interesting.
Yeah, that sounds really fun. What do you like? Collaborative storytelling is something we talk a lot about. What, and you talked about earlier, trust in doing the duet thing. When it comes to trust in collaborative storytelling, I mean, this is I just thought of this question, so this is technically for a question for Chandler as well. It's not necessarily how much trust do you put in that person, it's what boundaries do you set that you know that person will follow when it comes to storytelling, world building. Because just thinking of like, because in your game specifically, your new campaign, you're going to metagame a lot. Like you're embracing metagame. And that is, if you do that with a certain set of players, it is going to break the game entirely. So this isn't necessarily like, oh, how much do you trust them? This is like, why do you trust them? And what boundaries have you set with them that they have consistently followed in the... And this is for Chandler, who I know is also starting a campaign, or hoping to soon.
Yes and no.
Yes and no. I know you talked about it a little bit, but
yeah, well, yeah, kind of. I'm dipping my toes back into, like, since such a hiatus, pulling everything back out, bringing a few things to life. So actually, yeah, yes, I am. Okay, yeah, I am.
Sorry to make that real for you.
You can convince yourself, yeah.
Deer in the headlights moment, like, yeah, okay, yeah, maybe I am. Okay.
But anyway, it's not like those hand-picked, like, oh, I picked these people to play in my campaign because I trust them. It's like the collaborative, you know they're going to contribute something. Talk. Like, do you see what I'm saying?
Well, yeah,
I don't know how to phrase this question.
No. I think, see, with my situation currently, I have an idea for some of the players. So much as Luke was talking about, like, you have to have a certain amount of trust with these people who you're giving a part of yourself to them as well.
Yeah. So
handing that over, especially like, I think we talked about this before, in a creative setting, you're making yourself extremely vulnerable.
Yeah.
100%. With the amount of faith and trust you put in the person. Yeah, I mean, like you were saying, there's a certain amount of trust that you expect from the person sitting across from you. But when you are creating something out of thin air in a world, and you give it to these people, you allow them to walk freely into your mind that you set on a table in front of them. For me, it's a little bit difficult to allow someone else to mess around with what I have built. I'm a control freak.
I think most GMs are, mate. Don't worry, I am too. Yeah.
I can't. It's hard. It's so hard for me to be a player sometimes because I'm sitting there trying to have fun, and I'm like, really would like to be behind that screen right now.
Yeah, 100% get that.
So I don't know. I'm Luke. You have any
any words of wisdom on it? I think
I gotta think.
No, that's fair. I think for me, it comes down to And I'm a big believer, as I think most people should be, although I do know people that hate session zeros, but I'm a big believer in a good and stringent session zero. 100%, whether you've played with those people for years or not, like, or you've played many different campaigns, like any campaign's going to have a different tone. So like, I know with like the guys that I was playing with, I was like, look, like, you will be able to meta game in terms of based on roles that you make in the game. And I think that at least takes away a little bit of the game breakingness of it, because they could roll really crap when they're trying to find out what resistances this green dragon has or whatever. And they're not always going to know what the monsters are too. Like, there'll be some situations where they're like going to, I don't know, hunt whatever, and so they will know and they can research that, but there'll be things that crop up along the way that they won't know about and they won't have time to research. So in terms of the meta knowledge, I'm probably not going to allow it. But I think giving them that space, but equally just those boundaries. And like, I think what you said, Chandler, was really like right as well. If like, you're also at that table, right? Like, you are a player at that table too. You are supposed to have fun, and so oftentimes it's kind of put on the GM to make sure everyone's lines and veils aren't crossed. But actually, we should also be talking about our own lines and veils of saying like, I don't want this in the story, or I don't want a character that's got this, that, and the other, or I feel uncomfortable in this situation. Like, as a GM, I've had to do that to people before, of being like, actually, I know you might potentially want this, but I feel uncomfortable doing it, so can we leave it for now? It's not going to add or detract anything from the story for doing that. And bits and pieces like that, I think, especially when it comes to things, I mean, anything that teeters on sort of real world issues, but equally when it comes to things like romance in games and stuff like that, that can be a big topic, because some people love it, some people absolutely hate it. And some people can feel uncomfortable doing it. And so just making sure everyone's on the same page and you're very open and communicate very well about things, because I think, and I know people in Crit Role have talked about this, but there's been stuff that's happened on their streams where a character's made a bold choice and the rest of the characters have been like, why did you do that? And they've had to sit down after sessions and have a conversation being like, okay, let's talk this through a little bit. And so just being able to have those moments. So, you know, if something like that happens in the game, having the conversation with people outside of the game, obviously, just to say, or pausing, because we pre-record, so it's easy to pause and be like, right, what's going on? Just to make sure you're all just openly communicating, I think, is probably the biggest thing, which is tough. I'm not saying it's easy in the slightest.
Do you have any tools then? Either of you, do you have any tools that help, like lines and veils? Because I know that's very popular and how that's set up. But do you have any like specific tools that maybe you've come up with, or strategies you to communicate better? Players?
It all comes down to that session zero. Like it's for me, it's only popped up one time, which is saying something, I guess. But like maybe I'm very fortunate. Which when that line was crossed, I immediately said we're not doing that, and then that was the end of the discussion.
Yeah.
And then we just kept going. So thankfully I've done a pretty decent job of vetting my players and not playing with problem players, fortunately. So I unfortunately and fortunately I do not have any experience with, you know, a problem at this point in my life, and I hope I never do. I expect at some point I probably will. But it's like, it all comes down to session zero, laying it out and then standing firm, not just letting it pass by, because your players will, the other players who probably feel equally as uncomfortable as you do, or if not worse, will take notice, and they'll see how you are at standing by what you said. So, and that the toxicity could just like breed from that. So
yeah, it really can. I've definitely, and like as a younger GM at points, or when I was sort of early in my GMing, I've had like a problem player that's caused a lot of issues in a group, and it was like a home game, so it was a little bit it kind of is a little bit harder. I mean, barred shots, because there's a professional element, it can be a little bit easier at times to be like, right, we don't want this on the stream, or we're crossing sort of professional lines, in which case you can kind of use that. Though we haven't had an issue yet, I will say, like, touch wood, it's not happened just yet. But I have had it in a home game, and I've equally been the GM that's kind of like let it go on longer than I should have because I didn't feel confident in challenging it. Or you're like, is it just me? Or maybe it will get better. Maybe if we sort of steer people a bit more kindly. And sometimes it is just like no, we're not doing this, move on. And you do need to have that. But I think sometimes that comes with experience too. But I mean, in terms of tools, I use like a bit of a consent checklist just up front, just to check if there's any specific triggers for people to make sure we're not hitting on those. And I've said to people before, like, if there's something that happens, if you feel comfortable in that moment, just say stop and we'll stop. Or equally, if you don't feel confident, message me. I will always have like some kind of messaging app open, so people can just message and say I'm feeling uncomfortable, and then I can steer it myself, and people don't have to call it out themselves, because that can be tough sometimes, I think, especially if you don't want to like halt an RP moment, but then it's starting to border on something that can be quite triggering. But I mean, none of that is really my invention. It is all amazing tools out there by many other creators who've done it like far longer, really.
Well, I didn't mean to steer this in.
No,
kind of like the deep.
It's important.
Deep, trust.
Yeah.
But I'm just thinking, like, as well. I had an experience with a player who wanted to play a character that would have been very, very triggering for me specifically.
Yeah.
If most people are aware, I have a chronic illness, and so that comes with a lot of doctors. Just putting it out there, and sometimes doctors can be bad or good. They wanted to play not good doctor, is what I'm gonna say. And I was like, I cannot. I'm not in the right headspace. Maybe in the future, but like I am just not in the headspace to do that kind of story specifically. So it's really interesting to me that I was just I'm like, there's a lot of trust that goes into, and they were fine with it. They stepped back immediately, said, I apologize, I didn't think of it. And so I'm just thinking of this like TTRPGs, the storytelling in them can be very, very intense, because like we said, you're putting yourself out there, you're open, and like players are actively putting pieces of themselves in their characters, and you, the GM, are allowing them to want creation. So it's all, I feel like it could all like teeter at a moment's notice. But I think trust and communication are very, very important. And it's so cool that how so many people do that. And so one last question.
Sure.
What's our time at? 10? Okay, we'll do one last question.
Sure.
That I have. Oh, well, this will get kind of stuff. How do you think your experiences in real life affect your world building and how you're playing and stuff? So this is kind of going along with the deepness of what we've talked about. But you don't have to say I grew up in this town and this, but like general things of like,
and my family was slaughtered by goblins, and then
exactly. And so,
thus I began my journey.
How do you think like not necessarily your outlook on life has shaped your world building? Maybe that's a better way to say it.
No, I think equally, I think what you're saying in terms of just how your life shapes it, or your real life experiences do as well. I think sometimes as a player, even more so, I've definitely touched on like parts of myself in characters. So like I've got a paladin, so a big part of my personality is people pleasing, and so using my paladin to kind of explore like how that can go quite wrong quite quickly has been a little bit eye-opening, and definitely made for some interesting therapeutic questions in my real life. But I think in terms of world building, I'm a big lover of history. I'm a big lover of sociology and psychology. My day job is kind of in the sociology, psychology aspect of the world. And so it definitely makes world building more interesting, because naturally my work is all about sort of thinking about like groups of people, how they're effective, and then on a psychological level, how individuals are affected through that. And some of that comes from a historic lens of sort of injustices in the world over many, many years, which I won't go too deep into. But in terms of then in a TTRPG world, no matter what kind of world it is, whether it's modern fantasy or sort of futuristic settings, I think it helps shape how a world can impact on a person. So how we can go from a world to an individual, because I can see the wider aspects, or I'm interested in the wider aspects of why a world has got to the point it has from a historical lens. I'm then interested from a perspective of why certain groups work in certain ways, or why some groups don't like others because of different aspects of sociology that they've gone through, or different sort of group think aspects, and then how an individual in that setting might feel, especially if they're trying to either divert from that social group, join a different social group, or trying to divert entirely from some kind of society. And I think that is kind of the levels of world building that you tend to go through anyway, which is, what's the history of this world, who are the people in it, and what groups do they form, and then you then go into the character and it's kind of triangle almost of who is this individual in this world and what are they trying to do or do differently. And so it's helped enormously in world building, because it's kind of what I've done and how I see the world on a day-to-day lens. So it makes it a little bit easier when I'm making fantasy world really to go like, oh, I can pull on these aspects in this aspect, or there's this kind of theory, not to make it sound entirely academic, but this theory of how groups work, and then I can see it playing out in a D&D sort of setting. So it helps enormously. And then I think just in terms of like a personal ethos, to make it slightly less academic, like I'm always a big believer in, and not to bring up Critical Role again or to quote it directly, but leaving the world better than you found it, and trying to bring a little bit of light into what can be a tough world at times. And so doing that through these games, whether it is even in horror-based games, which can be quite soul-destroying at times, but still having those moments of comedy and levity like we talked about earlier, or leaving a lasting message and it having a message in it, and not just being horror for horror's sake in some respect, is a big part of my world building. And I want to make sure that, we all come away from it feeling positive in some respect, whether it's because of a great story we've told or because we've had this great, interesting and fun dynamic.
I love it.
Thanks.
That's a really good explanation.
So just we're wrapping up here. So where can people find you? Just restate where people can find you. Shout yourself out again, and we will finish up the session. Not the session, like we're doing a session. The podcast. But where can people find you? What are you doing next? And say your favorite color. I don't know. Go.
Favorite color's green, if you couldn't tell by some of the branding. I am on all social medias apart from Twitter or X as NomadicBard93. Most active on Instagram is probably the best place to follow me. Bard Shots is on Twitch and YouTube. Again, if you search Nomadic Bard 93 or Bard Shots, it will come up, but you can find all the links on our socials anyway.
I will put the links in the descriptions of the YouTube video.
Incredible. We have got coming up. So next month, we've got a whole host of games. So we've got God Killer, which was rescheduled from last month. We are playing... what else are we playing? Orbital Blue. We're playing Vampire the Masquerade. I feel that there's another one that I'm entirely forgetting. Draconim, the one that I'm doing a session 04 after this. That's terrible of me. Can you tell I've got too many games? And then stay tuned for sort of May and June onwards, and see what we've got going on. June will be quite fun because we're going to do some Pride Month based games, because it's UK is Pride Month of the UK in June.
Oh, sweet.
I'm probably going to do some fundraising through that as well. So stay tuned and please donate if you can. But and then come July we'll be, or probably in May, we'll be starting to post about what the campaign will look like and when it will be coming out. So just keep an eye on our socials for all that goodness.
Yes, and all those links. I will put everything. I will put every single link I can find about you.
Oh God! All of them.
All of them. But
and your government email is.
But yes, thank you so much for joining us. And as we are wrapping up, Chandler, was there anything you wanted to say?
It feels great to come back and record again after such a long hiatus. I think our last episode was before Christmas. Maybe
it was before Christmas.
Oh,
Yeah.
So now here we are recording this on March 22nd of 2026.
Woot woot.
So it feels good to get back. Luke, you were a good, great guest to have back as a
Thank
first
you.
one to get our feet back wet again. So.
Yeah, you were just fine.
Yeah, I mean, that's
you're
valid,
okay. Okay.
I'll take it.
No, you were awesome.
Yeah, but we loved having you on, and thank you so much for coming on, and we really appreciate you coming on and talking about everything that you've done, about your worlds. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It's been an absolute joy to come on and talk about it and to do the podcast with you guys. I've been listening for a little while anyway, so it's always good fun to come on board. So thank you very much.
Yeah, of course. All right. Well, this has been Playing with Ink, and we will see you next time.
Yep, I'm Narwin, and we did not mention Tolkien this session. Oops, sorry.
Yeah, dang it! Now you did.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.